Hi everyone, welcome to today's class. Today I'm handling topic 9 of public procurement, and topic 9 is about preference and reservation schemes in procurement. A very interesting topic where we shall be able to understand which are these preference groups and which are these groups which have been reserved, what has been reserved. So it is one thing to understand the preference group and another thing to understand the reservation. So preference, when you're looking at preference, just understand it in terms of target groups. There are certain target groups that have been given reservation. Now reservation is asking yourself, what have they been given? This reservation is 30% of the contract. So there is first preference and then you come to the reservation part. So we can be able to differentiate between the two terms. So if you talk about preference, it is the right or opportunity to select a tenderer from an identified target group. So it means there is a target group and you have the right or the opportunity to be able to select a tenderer from that target group. On the other hand, reservation involves exclusive preference of procurement of goods, works, and services set aside to a defined target group. So what is the difference between preference and reservation? Preference is a target, preferring target groups or being able to give exclusive rights to certain target groups. While reservation, you go ahead and put a percentage of whatever you're going to give to this target group. For instance, SMEs is a preference group. Small, medium enterprises in Kenya is a preference group. Women is a preference group. People with disability is a preference group. The youth is a preference group. So those are preference groups. And then you go ahead and ask yourself, what is the reservation? Reservation is now 30% of a contract given to these particular preference groups. That is the difference between the two. So once you've identified who are the preference groups and what are they reserved for, there are certain factors to consider. The government of Kenya has already identified, number one, the target groups. So these target groups we are calling preference groups, they are already there. And we shall look at them just soon. These target groups have to be identified and their eligibility criteria. So it is not just about looking at a target group. Look at the target group and the eligibility requirement. Number two, there is a percentage that has been attached to this particular margin of preference. And if I can speak about it now, it is 30% of a contract. That is what the Public Procurement Act stipulates. Number three, there are goods, works, or services which have been set aside for these reserved groups. So not all the goods, not all the works, not all the services. There are specific goods, works, and services where these reservation groups can be considered. Number four, the regions to which this scheme applies. The region is important. There are some target groups that are in very undeveloped regions. Those target groups will be given more preference than if you are in a target group that is in a developed region. So there are those regions which are still so far economically, and they are usually considered more for these particular assignments. And then number five, there has to be a means of measuring effectiveness. Means of measuring effectiveness. It means for you to be able to say that this particular contract was successful because we gave it to this particular target group, there has to be a way of you measuring effectiveness. Did it work or not? Because it is often possible for you to give a contract to a particular target group and they fail to comply because of so many other reasons. So there has to be a means of measuring the effectiveness of these target group contracts. Now, after you've understood what has been put in place, because target groups are already there, those percentages are there, the goods, works, and services are there. So you go ahead and look at the eligibility criteria. So because you're in a certain target group, it does not make you be given a contract anyhow. You have to fulfill the eligibility criteria. And let me just mention, it is just the normal eligibility criteria for any prospective supplier or prospective contractor. One is legal capacity. You have to be legally capacitated to enter into a contract. Number two, you don't have to be insolvent, in receivership, bankrupt, or in the process of being wound up. So you should have enough money. So it's not us, the government or the procuring entity, feeling pity on you. You have to comply. Number three, you have to be a member of a regulated professional body. A member. So you being a small enterprise does not make you not to become a member of any professional regulated body. The person and their subcontractors should not be debarred from participating in procurement proceedings. So you should not have been debarred or prevented by any reason from participating in procurement proceedings. You should fulfill all your tax obligations. You should not have been convicted of corruption or fraudulent practices, and then you should not be guilty of any serious violation of fair employment laws and practices. So you see, this eligibility criteria is the one we normally use for selecting the normal suppliers. Okay, we'll just call them the ordinary suppliers, the ones who are competitive enough. So in this particular case, we are not going to say because this is a person living with disability or this is a company owned by people living with disability, so they do not have to have legal capacity. No, you have to follow all the eligibility criteria for you to be considered. So we go to these target groups. There are 5 major target groups. Someone is to ask you, which are these target groups? Number 1, the micro, small, and medium enterprises. This is just they are separated in form of sizes. Micro is very small, then followed by small, and then followed by medium enterprises. So these are enterprises that are producing the same products as those large enterprises, but they are minimized by size. Maybe their quantities are not so large. That is why they are called micro, small, and medium enterprises. Number 2, people living with disabilities or enterprises owned by people living with disabilities. Number 3, the youth and youth-owned enterprises. That is number 3. Number 4 is women and women-owned enterprises. And then lastly, local contractors, suppliers, farms where the locals are the shareholders. So local contractors are part of the target group. So we have to notice the difference between a local contractor and a citizen contractor. Sometimes contractors part usually confuse. Who is a local contractor? A local contractor is a firm registered in Kenya and has above 51% of Kenyan shareholding. That is a local contractor. If we look at your shareholding and we see 51% or even more than 51 is owned by a Kenyan, then that is a local contractor. A citizen contractor is a firm which is fully owned and controlled by a person who is a Kenyan citizen. So if you are to be called a citizen contractor, then you should be owning a firm in Kenya and you are a Kenyan citizen. You could be a citizen contractor registered outside Kenya. So you could be a firm that has gone to open branches outside Kenya. So you are registered outside Kenya. You will only benefit from the preference and reservation scheme when bidding for international contracts, international tendering contracts. That is where you fall, because you do not fall among the local. You may be a local or a Kenyan, but your company is not in Kenya, it is outside. So the best method of procurement you can use in case of reservation is the international tendering method. And then also a foreign contractor can also benefit from the preference and reservation scheme by entering into a joint venture or subcontract with a firm which is in Kenya. So you could be a foreign firm, but you come and enter into a joint firm, a joint venture with a Kenyan, and then you can be able to get that particular preference and reservation scheme. So understand those types of contractors, because sometimes people confuse between local and citizen. So if you understand them that way, you can be able to know I'm a local contractor or I am a citizen contractor. So the registration process, you have to register for these target groups or preference. It's not automatic that because I'm a small firm, I will automatically be qualified. No, you have to register. And where do you register? You register with the National Treasury. If any one of you have ever heard of the AGPO certificate, Access to Government Procurement Opportunities certificate, that is the certificate that will help you be able to be considered as a target group among the 5. So you need that AGPO certificate. And where do you get the AGPO certificate? From the National Treasury. And how do you get it? You get it after registration. So you just visit the website, or you can be able to be given a form, and then you fill all the details. You fill the list and attach certificates of incorporation, PIN certificates, VAT certificates, company profile, national identity, every detail. And then you can now be considered or put in that list of registered people as target groups. So registration is mandatory. You have to be able to register. There is something else which is very critical in reservation and preservation. That is unbundling of procurement contracts. In other terms, we've looked at this part, but we looked at it in terms of splitting of contracts. We said in one of the principles of public procurement, you are not supposed to split a contract for the sake of avoiding to use a certain method of procurement. Most people do that. Most procuring entities do that. They'll want to split one big contract into so many so that they can avoid using a certain method of procurement, because that method of procurement is usually very cumbersome, like the open tendering, very cumbersome method. So you'll find people want to avoid it by trying to split the contract. But accordingly, you're not supposed to split a contract unless it is for the reason of reservation and preservation. So if you're splitting it so that you can achieve this 30% to be able to give to a target group, that is acceptable. But if you're splitting it to avoid competition, then that is unacceptable. So there is this concept we call unbundling of contracts, or we call it splitting of contracts, to benefit the 30% of target groups. That is acceptable. So there are certain circumstances under which you can unbundle the contracts. There are advantages of unbundling. You can go through them. Increased competition. It balances economies of scale versus diversity. It allows the buyers to distribute risk. Those are benefits of unbundling a contract. It helps these SMEs to be able to actively participate in a contract, etc. Apart from that, we have factors to determine if unbundling should occur. You just don't wake up and decide to unbundle. There are factors you consider, like if the contract of work is in more than one location. It is a big contract, yes, but it is in several locations. Then you can unbundle so that it can benefit different target groups in different locations. The size and complexity of the procurement. If the procurement is large in size, then unbundling is better than if the procurement is small in size. So look at the size of the procurement to be able to consider unbundling. Another reason is The range of goods and services. A contract with a wide range of goods and services needed can be ideal for unbundling. So if you have so many ranges or a wide range of goods and services in the same contract, then unbundling is reasonable in that case. And then lastly, contracts that are have more flexibility and longer time frames or are less complex are less likely to experience a work disruption if unbundled. So look at how flexible your contract is, how long your contract time frame is. A shorter contract cannot be unbundled, but a longer one, or the one which has a longer time frame, it can be considered for unbundling. So that is it. And when it comes to national reservation, there is something to note here. National reservation are offered to citizen contractors who are offering goods, works, or services that are assembled, manufactured in that particular country. Maybe motor vehicles, furniture, goods for mining, hospitality. So you can give these citizen contractors such contracts, the ones which are assembled, manufactured, mined, or extracted within the nation. So that is it. There are some important things to note as I conclude in reservation. 1, tender security is not necessarily required for these target groups. So you may not ask them for tender security. Why? Because of their size. They are small, marginalized groups, so you may not really focus so much on the tender security. Number 2, these particular reservation groups have limits. Once you're put in that list of groups to be reserved or considered, it's not forever. In fact, it is for 2 years and then renewed up to a maximum of 10 years. So that certificate will be given or to be considered. It is not forever. It has to be renewed, and most likely after 2 years, and then you keep renewing it up to a maximum of 10 years. So after 10 years, we should not still be considering you as an SME, especially unless you want to start again, but mostly it is given a maximum of 10 years. By 10 years, a medium enterprise should have grown to become a large enterprise. So and also another reason is to give room for others which are upcoming. So if you keep being there for 10, 20, 30 years, there are people who are coming up with micro, small, and medium enterprises. Where will they fit? So you consider the term limit. There are term limits, 2 years, and then you are extended up to a maximum of 10 years. And then there is transfer of skills and technology. You have to transfer your skills and technology, especially if you are in these reserved groups. So you surrender your skills and technology once you offer that particular contract. Tender documentations have to be in place. They have to be there. Finally, the challenges of implementing preference and reservation schemes. These are normal challenges. 1, remember the preference and reservation schemes, there are very many. Just picture one scheme like small, medium, and micro enterprises. How many are there in Kenya? There are so many. So if you want to start, and that's why the registration process is there, because if there was no registration process, it could be chaotic. So if you're interested, that is when you start the registration process. So challenges include lack of strict enforcement. Sometimes people don't enforce these reservation schemes very well. Lack of financial capacity to deliver the awarded contract. You've been given a contract, you're not able to deliver it because you don't have enough money, because you are a micro enterprise. Poor quality goods. You can deliver poor quality goods just for you to fulfill that contract. That's another challenge. Delays in delivery. That's another challenge. Lack of technical capacity. One group getting higher percentage of opportunities than others. Inability to balance and corruption, favorism, discrimination, those are all in one group. You can be able to face all these challenges. Delayed payment due to financial constraints by some procuring entity, all those are challenges that face this particular preference and reservation groups. So this is a very interesting topic. Understand it, because most Kenyans will start from somewhere. You cannot all of a sudden wake up and become a big enterprise. You can start from a micro, grow to a small enterprise, grow to a medium enterprise until you become a large enterprise. So if you're a small enterprise, you're a woman living with disability, or you are people living with disability, you are women and you have an enterprise, you are a youth and you have enterprise, then you can be able to be considered for government tenders. So all is not lost. Most times we usually think that government tenders are only given to these large corporations. But with this topic, you can be able to understand even a small company can be able to participate in government procurement. So that is it for today. I hope we are okay with that.